KG of Vicha filed a lawsuit against JYP to terminate her contract. According to her, she filed this last February, and that's probably the reason Vicha has been inactive. Because according to JYP, they're trying to fix it before the group actually returns to their activities. Now, just want to make everybody sort of become more sensitive to the fact that KG is a minor. She's 17, and that is in the United States legally a minor. So let's be very, very sensitive about that fact. Um, let's be extra gentle. Um, Practice more restraint than we used to because we're talking about still a kid. All right. Now, I want to make it clear, and I've made this clear several times, that for me, I am still a firm believer that when it comes to minors, they should be allowed to terminate their contracts easier than adults. I'm not saying that they should just be allowed to terminate their contracts if they want, but I think it has to be easier when they are minors. um, I do think that it is also at the end of the day going to benefit the industry in general, because then management companies are going to realize that it's better to just sign up an adult 18-year-old, 19, 20, 21, 22, and get rid of that ageism, right? A lot of people think that once you get to 21 you're like ancient, like hello. I think a lot of 25, 26, 27-year old are just as talented. They can definitely do more, and at that age you're more mature, you're more whole about your identity, you know who you are, and I think it's going to be better for their art. So and but at the heart of that is the fact that they are minors, like that these are kids, like they don't know what they want. That's just the risk that you take when you sign up kids. And yes, even with, if you would remember the very first time that I did a live stream talking about this case with old shorts, my point is that there is one minor out there in that group, and that she has to be treated differently from the rest because she is a minor. Okay. So this is the, if you are a member of my Patreon, I actually posted the actual lawsuit that she filed against JYP US. So I'm going to show you some of um the important, I feel important clauses in that lawsuit. In Patreon, you can actually download the entire law. It's a public document, so that's why I feel comfortable just showing it. Okay, so one of the things that was mentioned is that JYP, the dance teacher that they have, actually yelled at KM for um for for not being able to get the dance, I guess. And she was actually not allowed to drink until she got the dance. That's her claim. She was not allowed to drink, and the stress of the dance routine actually made her tear her tendon on her shoulder. So JYP also promised her a certain amount of base pay, while yeah, they were promised a certain amount of base pay. But JYP not only failed to pay minimum wage, but it also inserted a buried clause that meant KM was responsible for her own pay. Your base pay will be recoupable by the company against other entertainment income payable to you. Okay. So do remember that they signed a contract, right? And in this lawsuit, they're actually saying that in that contract that they signed, it's there. I don't know why they said buried. Excuse me. So I'm not really sure why they called it buried, because it's not like it's a fine print. It's pretty prominent, and I'm going to show you parts of the contracts. Okay. Now, another part of the lawsuit says that while the agreement specifies that group living was optional, it was not presented the way to KM. That way to KM. She was pressured to live there by JYP staff, leaving her with a fear of negative repercussions if she did not. She was told by JYP staff. Basically, what they're saying is that although they didn't say it is required to live in the same apartment as the rest of the members, she was sort of manipulated into thinking that if she does not live with the rest of the members, it's going to be her disadvantage. Now, the thing is that JYP shows a $2.5 million house. in LA, and they made that and they put it on her tab, the tab of the rest of the members. So now each of the members have each actually has a 500,000 debt automatic, because that's the cost of the apartment that they're living in, or the house that they're living in. JYP made at least two significant misrepresentation to KM and the court. One, JYP promised there would be no filming at the group residence, but there was a hidden camera filming at the group residence. And JYP promised it would comply with California Labor Code, which it did not. Okay. They also stated KM's daily schedule often began at 7 a.m. and then ends at 11 p.m. And she has school the next day. So she doesn't really get a lot of rest. And she was denied basic nourishment. They were pressured into losing weight. That's a common problem in K-pop. Before televised appearances, KM was told by a JYP staff that she would regret how she looked, meaning she was gaining weight. The hours of forced repetition caused to tear a tendon in her shoulder. So this is about the practice was excruciating. Yet the company continued to force her to work through the injury. This was not an isolated incident throughout her time at JYP. KM and other members of Vicha were repeatedly forced to dance and perform with severe injuries. And this is part of the conversation that she had with another member of Vicha. Okay. There was an attempt in 2024. I'm going to quickly just mention this. I don't want this to. So there was one of the members took 42 pills, and it was an attempt to take her own life. JYP controlled KM's everyday life, including her one day off each week, which is a Sunday, requiring her to submit plans for her day off. Okay, JYP claimed by April 2024 that KM's work and efforts had earned her an accumulated net income of approximately minus 504,543, meaning they haven't yet broken even. All the expenses that JYP put forward, JYP has not recuperated yet. So she's still in debt of 504,543. And then they actually went through the different appearances, guestings, performances that they did, and they're questioning, well, with all this money we're still in debt 500,000. So these are some of the lawsuits that they are filing: violation of California child labor laws because she's a minor, failure to pay minimum wage, failure to provide meal and rest breaks, failure to provide a safe work environment, wage theft, overtime violations, unjust enrichment, conversion. So there's actually, like, I don't know, like 19. So there are maybe more. Yeah, probably more. If you go into Patreon, you can actually download the actual lawsuit. Okay, so these are parts of the contract. This is not the entire contract, just parts of it. Member personality. You acknowledge and agree that you may be assigned a designated character and personality. This is such a weird thing for me to read. Which designation may require you to, for the duration of the term, go by designated moniker, member name, maintain a physical appearance and personality, demeanor that is consistent with your assigned character. Imagine that. So if they say that you're the quiet one, you have to be quiet. Danji said, Fairlane, I believe her, and I hope that this puts an end to JYP, aka Stel. He only cares about the bottom line, and he indebts these young people to him. Okay. But like, isn't this like weird that they are going to assign a personality to you? But this happens not just in K-pop, but also in the Western industry. Housing and relocation. So this is the actual contract. You acknowledge and agree that for the duration of the term, you will be required to reside in Los Angeles area within reasonable driving distance of company's office and group practice facilities. So you're not saying that you have to live in the apartment. They're saying you just need to be close. You also acknowledge and agree that company has determined, based on its long-standing experience developing and producing highly successful singing groups, that a group residential setting is a key element to the development and success of singing groups and their individual members. Therefore, for the duration of the term, company will provide you the opportunity to reside in the residence shared with other members. So it's not required. They're saying that we're going to provide you the opportunity. Okay. You acknowledge and agree that your guardian, because she's a minor, she has a guardian, must also reside with reasonable driving distance from the residence of the group. The group's members' guardian, they're going to give them a relocation fee. This is what that that clause says. Social media, you acknowledge and agree that during the term, companies shall have the right to require you to deactivate and protect from any public viewing or access all of your then existing active or dormant social media accounts, including without limitation alias accounts, Finsta, etc. Okay, so I have control over your social media accounts. Third party agreements. It is the sole discretion. What this is saying is that it is the sole discretion of the company who to work with in her behalf, and that they need to sign everything, that they know they don't need to consult her. So they are the ones that are signing the contract, basically. Initial period, it's actually 4 years, much shorter than the 7 of K-pop. And then they have the second option of actually extending that for another 3 years. Without limiting the generality of the foregoing, I love legal terms. Company and any person or entity designated by company shall have the exclusive perpetual right throughout the universe to manufacture, sell, distribute, transmit, and or advertise goods and services embodying the work under any trademarks, trade names, or labels, and to license, convey, and otherwise exploit the works by any manner. So a lot of people are questioning this, like in perpetual right throughout the universe. I just want to let you know that this is a standard clause in any kind of contract in the US for an artist. So yeah, it is kind of like perpetual throughout the universe, but this is a standard clause in any artist contract in the US. Okay, you hereby grant the company and its licenses and assigns the irrevocable perpetual right and license throughout the universe to use your name, sobriquet, likeness, photograph, caricature, avatar, voice, etc. So they're basically saying that even if Elon Musk actually succeeds and put life on Mars, and you start a career in Mars, they still own that. So I'm laughing about it, but this, as I've said, is a standard part of any kind of contract in Hollywood, not just in the US, not just in K-pop. So it is perpetual right throughout the universe. Okay, notwithstanding anything to the contrary set forth herein, during the term provided you are not on unpaid leave of absence and you have not otherwise been terminated, you will receive a base pay of no less than $500 per week, which may be compensation for hours worked, vacation, and paid leave. However, okay, your base pay will be recoupable. So they're giving you a base pay, but you still need to earn that back. Okay, so that becomes a part of your debt to the company. So this is the minimum compensation that they are guaranteeing: $9,000 first year, $12,000 second year, $15,000 third and fourth and fifth, sixth and seventh. Okay, that's just the base pay. All right, do you have questions about it? Okay, so I will answer some of the questions that you asked me, that you sent to me. Do I think she's telling the truth? I think that she is telling the truth. I do think that there are some things that are worded to favor her case, which is natural. For example, as I've mentioned before, I don't know why they said that they buried a clause about recoupable expenses when it's there, right? So that's one. Second, I do think that there is a misunderstanding. A lot, the contract, if you read it in full, is no different from a contract, from a Hollywood contract, and no different from a K-pop contract. For example, that's in Hollywood terms is just an advance. So if you sign a contract with any recording company, they can actually give you an advance, and then you still need to recuperate that money to the company. And until that's recuperated, then you don't earn. The same thing with K-pop. Um, I do think if there is truth to her not being given water, I think that's a violation of basic human rights. I do think that um, she should not, I think, just let her eat. Like, I think that is just basic human rights. Just let her eat if you want, if she wants to eat. Um, so those things, like if it's true that she was injured and she was being forced to actually practice, that's not right. So for as long as these things are true, I think that is in itself grounds for termination of the contract, because in the US that's like a violation of, and she's a child, she's an underage, she's underage. So I definitely think that she's telling the truth, but I also think that there are certain claims that she made some tweaks to sort of favor her, which I don't blame her for, because that's just how legal things happen. But in terms of do I think she's justified for like terminating the contract? She's, as I've mentioned in the beginning, she's a child. And I am a firm believer that when this is a child, when we're talking about a child, it should be easier for them to tap out. It's not like automatic, but it should be easier for her to tap out. However, I also understand the perspective of JYP. Again, let's go back to the favorite word of the day, precedent. You don't want to set a precedent. You don't want people, artists, to just be signing with JYP and terminating their contract when they want it. You are going to, just as a company, as an entrepreneur, you want to make it as hard as possible for the person, so that the next time somebody signs under your company, they know what they're going to be facing. But I will stand by what I said. She's a child and she should be allowed an easier way out of her contract. Did she bite more than she can chew? Probably. But that's the risk that a company will be taking if you're signing a contract. If you want to be able to really lock somebody in a contract, then sign adults, not children. Um, so that's my take. That's why I said it's her mother pulling the strings, pulling her strings. Danji said, but he is setting a precedent that says it's okay to abuse, cheat, and lie and hold people hostage for their dreams. No, I understand you. I understand what you're saying. And as I've said, if those things are true, that she was not allowed to drink water while practicing, I think that is absolutely unacceptable. Like she was not allowed to eat, absolutely unacceptable. If the contract says that it is it is optional for them to leave to reside in that residence, uh, that is unacceptable. And then she was forced to do it. That's unacceptable. I understand what you're saying. I agree with you. I'm just trying to be objective and provide people different perspective. And the truth is that there is a separate it may be the wrong perspective. Okay, let me just put it that way. It may be the wrong perspective, but it's still a perspective of the company. And from the company's perspective, we do not want to set a precedent. We're not going to make it easy for anybody to just tap out of a contract. I don't agree with it. As I've mentioned already in the beginning, she's a minor, and I think it should be easier for her to tap out of a contract. If all of those things are true, that she was denied water, denied food, that there is a camera in their residence and they weren't told, absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. But as I've said, I'm providing you the perspective of JYP. Okay. Um, let's see. Where are her parents? I don't know. So there's another person who signed as a guardian, but no mention of the parents. It seems to me that she just didn't fully understand what she was getting into, and this was not her desire to move forward. She wants to take it out. um that is a huge possibility that she didn't fully understand what she was getting into. And again, I go back to the fact that she's a minor. That's like, for a company, if you're dealing with a minor, this is a risk that you take. Let me just, so for the abuse part, if she wasn't given water, if she wasn't given food, if they were being recorded and they had no idea about it, if she was forced into living in a place that she didn't agree with, all of those things, if all of those true, I think it's lock and loaded, terminate the contract, sue that, make the JYP, make them fine, pay a fine. So, okay, we're good on that part. Now, is there a possibility that she didn't fully understand what she was getting into? Definitely, there's a huge possibility. But as I've said, she's a minor, and that's the risk that you take when you're dealing with a minor. It's possible that all of it, all the things that we are speculating about could be true, and it's also possible that all the things that we're speculating about may also be false. So there's just, what we see is just the lawsuit and the contract. That's all we know. But we aren't there. We're not experiencing any of those things. Okay.